Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Professor Michael Tharagan, shall we begin the lecture?
We can start. We can start.
Good
Yes, can
afternoon,
you hear me?
everyone. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we'll start. On behalf of the KCHR, we are very glad to welcome all of you to the 10th webinar of the KCHR webinar series by Dr. Kamal Christie, KG. Dr. Kamal Christie will be speaking on cities as a continuum, an embodied cinematic geography of Kochi. As you know, the previous webinar of this month was also on different, focused on Kochi, and Dr. Christie's lecture will be about the embodied cinematic geography of Kochi, and we are very glad that she agreed uh, to join us today for this presentation. We welcome all of you to the lecture, and we request all of you except the presenter to kindly mute your mic during the duration of the lecture. I request Professor Michael Tharagan to please take over the proceedings.
Uh, Thank you very much. Uh, I personally welcome Dr. Kamal Christie, Assistant Professor in the Department of Journalism at Kamala Nehru College, University of Delhi. We are all happy that you have found time and uh, took efforts to come and attend this program and deliver an interesting lecture by its title itself. We are going to discuss the city of Kochi in terms of cinematic geography, which I presume, because I'm not at all proficient in this um, kind of reading, but I'm sure that historians, like any other social scientists, will be very much interested in whatever sources which can look at a phenomenon and like the formation and continuing existence of a suburb of a urban phenomenon like a city, whether it is built upon. Um, anyway, I think all cities are partly built upon um, geographical features as well as on imaginary features too, because people tend to have their own perceptions which sometimes borders on the area of imaginations. So I presume this kind of interpretation, this kind of an approach to an interpretation, because I'm as keen as everybody else to hear Dr. Kamal Christie's presentation, and I'm sure that it would um, help us in understanding a new dimension of the um, analysis of a formation which we call urban conglomeration or a city. Um, and Kochi is one of the very few cities that we have in Kerala, and that itself distinguishes it. But even then, even Kochi, even by Indian standards, is not such a big city. This is what I understand in terms of population or the area covered. It doesn't seem to be a city. But like any of the colonial port cities, which is has got a particular feature of being bordered by the sea on the one hand and by backwaters on the other, and a narrow strip of land where the city is built. Now, this kind of geography is, of course, we all are familiar with, but I'm sure that Carmel Christie would have a different story to tell. So thank you, Dr. Christie, and welcome. Dr. Christie, yes.
Thank you, Professor Michael Tharagan, for introducing me and also for setting the tone for my presentation. In fact, a lot of things that I will be talking about today resonate with what you just said about Kochi as a small city, but still significant in many ways, and what makes it significant and what is peculiar about its geography and so on. Before I start, I would also like to thank Dr. Rachel Verghese for asking me to make a presentation in this prestigious webinar series. I have worked on very different research questions in most of my previous works. So this is something, the work about post-independent Kochi is something that I started doing 3 years back. And I'm trained in cultural studies, and therefore most of my understanding of urban space production, or the way I understand urban space, is also informed by my training in cultural studies. And I would also like to take this opportunity to remember Mr. T. Peter, who was the Fishermen Union Workers leader, and he passed away recently. I remember him for the fact that he was one of the activists I kept talking to when I started working on urban space production in Kochi. And I acknowledge that conversations with him have shaped my understanding of the shores and shore communities as active agents in the creation of urban space in Kochi. So this is kind of a long paper. It has 3 different sections, and the first 2 sections are not very long, but the last section is quite long. So I'll read out most part of it, and I also have some slides to show. I, I also see a lot of my friends who have come to attend the presentation. So thank you all for taking out time and coming. So this presentation, as Professor Tharagan rightly pointed out, is more about how the city is imagined and how these boundaries between what is imagined and what is the physical space or material space kind of come together, kind of merge together. That is the whole premise of the presentation, and how people and how geography is not something that is separate from people and the self itself. So to start with, cinema as a production and capital intensive art form has been associated with urban centers, be it Hollywood, which is located in Los Angeles, Bollywood, Mumbai, or Madras. So there is this association with big cities and cinema. Emergence and growth of cinema and cities are associated with the process of industrialization and urbanization. Scholars have pointed out the mutually entangled production of the city of cinema, where major film studios are located, and the city that appears in cinema. In other words, cinema is informed by where it is produced from, a city most of the times, or elsewhere, and the city also gets shaped by the cinema in many ways. Therefore, to analyze and understand cinema, one may also look at the city from where it is produced and how the city figures in cinema. Recently, city and cinema have been studied beyond the framework of representation to understand the co-constitution of both the city and the cinema. For instance, the book Film Noir and the Space of Modernity by Edward Dimenberg, published in 2004, is an example of understanding film not just as a text, but as part of the evolution of sociality itself. Dimenberg, in his book, demonstrates the connected history of the film noir and the growth of urban space planning from 1939 to 1959. Similarly, Richard Koech and Les Roberts explain this framework further. I quote, "One that moves towards seeing film not only as a genre-dependent text, but also as a rich map of socio-cultural, political, economic, and of course, architectural discourses." Unquote. So my paper stems from this curiosity to understand this production of the city of Kochi in cinema, and how there is a um, mutually informed growth of both the city and both Kochi and Malayalam cinema. There is a cinematic city of Kochi emerging from those moving images which are getting etched in public memory. This paper tries to probe what kind of cinematic geography of Kochi is created and memorized through these films, and why these become the possible images from a multitude of possibilities. To understand this, it traces the trajectories of both the changing Malayalam cinema and the changing city of Kochi. As the ideas of development, nation making, and citizenship changed during different time periods, the cinema and the city could also be seen as changing and contributing to these transformations. The first section of the paper explains some of these connected transformations of the city and the cinema. The second section contextualizes the shift of Malayalam film industry to Kochi and how this is reflected in a new technical and creative ensemble and other changes. As a cumulative outcome of these various changes, I demonstrate that Malayalam cinema produces three distinct cinematic geographies of Kochi. So the third section elaborates this point in its four elaborate parts to establish this affective formation of the city and the cinema. From the 2000s, enhanced by connectivity and technological expertise, Kochi started attracting Malayalam cinema to its own linguistic and cultural territory. This period also witnessed a surge in the number of Malayalam cinema in which Kochi appears as a significant character, and different sports in Kochi which was not seen in frames before starts appearing in Malayalam cinema. It does not mean that the city was not present in Malayalam cinema earlier. Several films such as Anubhavangal Palichakal in the 70s, in 80s, there are several movies in which Kochi forms the background for the plot. In Anubhavangal Palichakal, the crucial junctures in the plot develops in the urban space of Kochi and its famous spots such as Shanmugam Road, earlier form of walkway along the shores of the backwaters, etc. However, one distinct aspect in the cinema that we'll be discussing today about Kochi compared to these earlier films is the foregrounding of multiple spatialities within the city and the diversity of characters specific to these spaces. Cities as spaces where capital, people, and resources are concentrated have attracted much scholarly attention for centuries. Dr. Justin Matthew has discussed some of the frameworks in urban studies in the last presentation, which makes it easier for me to not elaborate on those parts again. Like cinema, cities have also undergone major transformations and become the site of these changes, the most recent of them being neoliberal policies with its repercussions still resonating globally. With the developing countries adopting neoliberal policies since the 90s, the boundaries of cities and the scope of exchanges of resources became seamless. Dutch-American sociologist Saskia Sassen comes up with this phrase, global cities, and she identifies some cities across the world, such as Tokyo, New York, and London, from where resources flow transnationally to spearhead the global economy as a result of globalization. Beyond its significant articulation of the flows of capital in cities across the world, scholars have pointed out the limitations of analyzing various cities within the same fold. Scholars like Janet Abulugoth, Malcolm McKinnon, and Several other people have criticized this tendency to group cities which have different histories of evolution together. For instance, post-colonial cities need to be understood in their historical and geographical specificities rather than through a mere comparison of their neoliberal experience with those of Western cities. There have been several studies about cities which focused on how there is more uniformity in cities across the world, where there are similar kinds of food that is being sold, or there are similar kinds of brands that one would encounter. So there are pockets of cities which are becoming more and more similar. This is one strand of studies which looked at globalization and cities have focused on for some time. So cities do have streets which look alike in some pockets, but they also consist of spaces and people that are endemic to those regions. Similarities of built environment in some sections of the city cannot be considered as the basis for understanding all city spaces as uniform and identical. This is because built environments in city spaces are not inert, but are enlivened by how people mark their lives on them. Greek cultural anthropologist Nadia Saramatakis, in her chapter Modern Cities of Silence, discusses the animated life of city structures. I quote, "The built environment and architectural space has to abandon much of its monumental aspirations and tendency for petrifaction and permanence. That the built environment has to become more of a living membrane, an empathic skin upon which citizens can write and capture the floods, immediacy, and indeterminacy of everyday life. We must learn to cultivate and to live in unfinished cities and cities of polyphonic history," unquote. The structures of the city also live through a rhythm and flow by acquiring meanings and life in relation to the people who inhabit these spaces. American political geographers like Edward Soja kind of takes forward this idea of spatiality and geography into how the human subject and the human body in itself is in a conversation. The human body in itself is a spatiality which is in conversation with several other complex spatialities. So in that sense, he kind of tries to understand that geography is something that is connected to bodies, connected to people. This is becoming clearer in these times when public spaces looked deserted and desolate because of the lockdown due to the coronavirus scare a few months back. The life of the city is complementary to how citizens inhabit those spaces. In other words, urban spaces acquire meanings from how they are embodied by people as well. This paper takes off from this premise in which affective spaces and dynamic technologies merge into each other in cinema as well as the city space of cinema. This takes us to the first section of the paper, Nation and City of Cinema. Like Professor Taragan mentioned, the southwestern state of Kerala does not have big metropolises such as Kolkata, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, etc. However, Kochi in central Kerala and Calicut in northern part of the state have a long history of trade with transnational traders and colonizers. Kochi sustained its status as a vibrant port throughout history, which resulted in the movement of people and goods across transnational boundaries. Today, Kochi is one of the most burgeoning two-tier cities in India with its high-rise buildings, information technology enterprises, Vallapadam International Transshipment Terminal, which is one of its kind in India, Cochin Porters, Cochin Shipyard Limited, etc. The economic nerve center of Kerala, Kochi is also hailed as a multicultural city. In his essay on Cochin, Ashish Nandi sees the multiculturalism of Cochin as offering a possibility for a harmonious living, despite the difference and suspicion each community holds for the others. Historian Dilip Menon notes, I quote, Kochi and Ernakulam are certainly the most cosmopolitan cities in Kerala. One could call Trivandrum a Nair town and Kozhikode a Muslim hinterland. Kochi belongs to everyone and everyone can belong to Kochi. So there is this cosmopolitan port city dimension which continues, unquote. In contrast to this much discussed multiculturalism of Kochi, early Malayalam cinema started themes which cultivated distinct Malayalam identity in relation to family, language, culture, and politics. After independence, mass media, including films, took up the role not just of cultivating a national identity, but also of forging linguistic state identities. Scholars have shown how the national and vernacular identities in cinema were premised upon dominant figures in terms of religion, caste, gender, and sexuality. By the late 70s, 80s, and 90s, and by 90s, when liberalization policies were adopted, there were different identities and formations taking up space. Indeed, this change does not mean that there was a radical shift, but the reordering of structures resulted in inadvertent consequences, such as the marginalized and diverse political subjects gaining some visibility in media spaces. The cinematic form moves forward by establishing characters in a specific spatiality, be it home, office, forest, rural, or urban, or virtual landscape like we have seen in the film See You Soon. Characters acquire life in the cinematic medium in their engagement with a particular spatiality. Spatial characteristics are painstakingly etched out in each movie, which by itself shows how deeply cinematic life is invested in spatiality created through an assemblage of technology. So cinema unravels a certain political, technical, and economic history of spatialities. Malayalam cinema has also registered urban life and spatial dynamics in changing patterns since its inception. Earlier Malayalam films depicted an aspiration towards modern ideals by challenging the existing inequalities in what appeared to be a non-urban milieu. In the first 2 decades after independence, cinema showed considerable enthusiasm in addressing political and social issues. There are several examples. Films such as Sthanarthi Sarama, Tulabharam, etc. are examples. These films responded to the call of embracing ideals of equality and the nation-making process underway at that time. India's agricultural economy, Gandhi's vision of villages, and Nehruvian ideals of development resonated in cinema after the 1950s with its rural landscape and questions of economic and social development. There were aspects of cities which was often juxtaposed with the village scenes in Malayalam films, such as in Anubhavangal Palichugal. In Anubhavangal Palichugal, Kochi forms the backdrop in which the hero runs away to from his political and family problems. The city provides anonymity to the character initially till he gets into a scuffle. He is later arrested for murder and sentenced to death by hanging. The city where the protagonist dies provides a contrast to the village where life unfolds in the movie. By the 1980s, city spaces become more pronounced and acquire some significance in Malayalam cinema. Malayalam films such as New Delhi is in 1987, Irupatam Nuttandu 87, America 83, Deshadane Kariyarilla 86, Shyama is also in 86, Gandhinagar 2nd Street 86. These are examples of this trend. While New Delhi and Irupatam Nuttandu are political thrillers which unfold in Delhi and Thiruvananthapuram, the other films like Shyama, Deshadane Kariyarilla, America are films in which Malayali characters come to a city in America and Kochi respectively where the plot is set. While most of the plot is set in the city, at the end, either they leave these cities or end up dying in the city. From the 90s, there are many more Malayalam films set in Kochi. This is a representative list. There are many more films than this, which is set in Kochi during this period. There is in this list, one can see that there is a considerable number of writers and filmmakers from Kochi, and also considerable number of Muslim writers and Christian writers and filmmakers from Kochi in this list. And all these films are set in Kochi, particularly some films such as In Harigar Nagar, Chapa Kurisha, Parava, Imayo, Anem Rasulum, Honeybee, Chota Mumbai, Kamattipadam, and Big D. The city becomes a prominent character where a specific part of the city is integral to the plot. The newfound prominence of the city in Malayalam cinema was facilitated by several economic and cultural transformations. The liberalization policies changed the norms for international trade in terms of flows of capital and resources. The centralized format of control under the nation state still remained, but with slight differences such as the easier flow of capital to different regions of the nation as per their utility. In this sense, cities and regions began to gain prominence not necessarily as absolute microcosm of the nation, but also on their own as sites with market potential, as businesses from across the world set up their firms and invested in various projects. There was a gradual shift from the centralized singular powerful entity of the nation to several powerful financial players in the field. If only the major metropolises such as Mumbai, Delhi, and Kolkata were the center of city-centered financial and other activities earlier, several smaller cities gained prominence as a result of this economic restructuring. So this is why the films set in Mumbai and other big cities are quite different, and historically also the evolution of film and cities in the connected evolution of city and cinema in these big cities are quite different from that of Kochi. As a result of economic restructuring, several two-tier cities such as Kochi became the locus of some changes. These changes reflected in the content of cinema as well as production. So that takes us to the next section. A coming together of technological, economic, and shifting social dynamics of the cinema and the city reflected on each other. Culmination of these diverse aspects in cinema does not need to be understood in a linear manner, but instead can be viewed as a play of multiple time, people, and space. Film studies has outgrown its earlier approach of studying city with reference to its representation in cinema. Instead, it is increasingly understood as a technology of place. I quote Charlotte Brunsden, who has written a book on London and English cinema, as a medium, cinema as a medium able to produce spatiality through the set of creative tasks, namely location, filming, mise-en-scène, framing, lighting, and editing, unquote. In 2000s, equipped with increased connectivity and the availability of technology, Kochi slowly became the base for Malayalam cinema production. The lack of an international airport was a hurdle for the city's trans-regional mobility. The new Cochin International Airport became operational by mid-1999. One of the full-fledged film studios in Kochi, Lal Media, was started in Kallur in 2001. Today, within the span of 20 years, there are several film studios, some of them owned by film directors and actors themselves. This shift resulted in an increase in the number of Malayali technical crew members in production who constituted in production. This change is noticeable in the increasing number of noted film directors, cinematographers, and writers from Kochi, such as Siddiq, who is an actor, director, screenplay writer, and producer. He started with the first his film Pappan Priyapetta Pappan in '86. Lal, who is also director, actor, and producer. Ashik Abu, Benny P. Nayarambalam, who is a screenplay writer. He has written screenplays for films like Chota Mumbai, Chota Mumbai, many important films, will come back to it later. Samir Tahir, Shaiju Khalid, Saubin Shahir, and the list goes on. Some of these directors own film studios in Kochi today, where most of their production work is carried out. Several Malayalam film actors such as Mammootty, Srinivasan, Mohanlal, etc. shifted their work base from Madras to Kochi. Also, a new set of actors from Kochi found space in Malayalam cinema after this period. Advancement in technology changed not just film viewing experience, but reordered human traffic in city spaces. The coming of multiplexes and their location in shopping malls resulted in reducing the human traffics from shops near popular single screen theaters in Kochi. A lot of bus stops in Kochi are named after single screen theaters such as Menaka, Sarida Savida Sangeeta, Shenais, Deepa, Padma, Kavita, etc. So some of these theaters have closed down, such as like Manaka theater is not working anymore, but there is a shopping mall in the name of Penta Manaka in the same place. But that bus stop is still known as Manaka. So all these single screen theaters around which there used to be a lot of traffic, these days is rather the traffic is much leaner than it used to be, as the film viewing experience has changed with the coming of multiplexes which are located in shopping malls. Several comparatively new cinema multiplexes such as Q Cinemas, PVR Cinemas, Cinepolis. Q Cinemas came in 2011, PVR 2013, 13, Cinepolis 2015, etc. are attracting crowds. This has reordered the cinematic and spatial experience of the city from that of the old days of single screen film viewing experience. Most of the Indian cities carry within themselves multiple geographies, spatialities, and people. For instance, cities such as Delhi and Hyderabad have parts of the city known as Old City, which is also the historical part of the city and inhabited largely by religious minorities. These cities within cities stand in contrast to the ones in studies, which we mentioned earlier, which discuss a certain uniformity that characterizes the networked cities in the globalized world. Kochi is also not an exception to this feature of diversity of people and geography. The multiple geographies of the city are socially produced in the way that it is inhabited and breathed in by its people. In this sense, city spaces are not disembodied spaces but embodied entities. How do these embodied geographies inform cinema? And cinema in turn create the polyphonic being of Kochi. This will discuss the last section, which has 4 different parts, which is titled The Cinematic Geography of Kochi. The geographical features of the region are inseparably linked to the city's emergence and sustenance. For instance, the earliest port in Cochin in its current location took shape in the 14th century as a result of a major flood, as it is said. This flood also created a cluster of islands such as Waipin, Bolgatti, Kadamakudi, Chenur, Kodadu, Varapura, etc. in the backwaters. So this part of the city is marked by sea in this map. These geographical changes made it possible for ships to enter the earlier port in Mattancherry. In the current modern port, ships enter into the port through the channel between Waipin and Fort Kochi. Therefore, these islands, though separated from the mainland by backwaters, are an important geographical formation which led to the development of Kochi as it is today. Historically, Waipin and the surrounding islands occupied a significant place in colonial times, especially for the Portuguese who built their fort in Pallipuram. Then the Dutch built Bolgatti Palace, which is a major tourist attraction and a hotel today. And there are also Dutch and Portuguese also had shipbuilding and repairing yards in Cochin, which is detailed in one of the recent articles by Dutch historian Erik Odegaard. So these islands symbolize a seamless continuity of port cities beyond the closed borders and boundaries of the mainland. This city is not an independent piece of land, but it is constantly created and sustained as a city by the sea and the backwaters. These continuities constitute a port city like Kochi as a geographically, historically, and aesthetically plural region. The multiplicities of geography are not just inert structures or inert conditions, but they are living spatiality for people who inhabit these spaces. They inscribe these spaces with life, and the spaces emerge as dynamic, lively membranes which nourish life. These multiplicities of the embodied geography and history of the city have also been repeatedly constituted and reconstituted through mediatized images, narratives, and visuals over a period of time. I demonstrate that this constitution was indeed in continuation with the social production of the geography of the region as circulated through developmental and cultural narratives. I identify that Malayalam cinema constitutes three distinct embodied geographies of Kochi in which the city is inseparable from the plot. They are the central part of the city, which is marked by C, which is marked, it is marked by B in this map. And this part of the city is often referred to as the heart of Kochi in cultural representations. And there is also a thriving business population who has settled earlier and later in this from the 60s in this part of the city. The second cinematic geographic part includes areas from the Tevara Bridge. One could see this is the part that is referred to by A in this map, and this is separated by the bridge from Tevara to this large chunk of land in this towards the west. So this includes places such as Thopumpadi, Perimbadappa, Kumbalangi, Mattancherry, Fort Kochi, etc., Chellanam, etc. Some of these parts were also the center of a lot of colonial activities, as they had some of them had their forts there, and some of them had their some of them used to live there, etc. Yet, a large area of this part is underdeveloped and populated by religious minorities such as Muslims and low-caste Christians as well. The third cinematic geographic part is the cluster of islands in the backwaters towards the north of the central part, with the Arabian Sea and backwaters bordering them from all sides, which is what we discussed earlier, the part referred to as sea in this map. Large numbers of population in the islands consists of non-upper caste Christian and Hindu shore communities, such as fishermen communities, Dalits, Latin Catholics, Anglo-Indians, etc. Some of these spaces have appeared in cinematic frames even before the 90s, but in quite a different manner. For instance, in Malayalam cinema of the 80s, scenes of joyrides in the backwaters or Bolgati Palace add beauty to the song sequences, such as in the film Shyama, Deshadanekli Kariyarilla, etc. Both these films were released in the same year in 86. Shyama was directed by Joshi and Deshadanekli Kariyarilla was directed by Padmarajan. The cinema took on the nature of a tourist to these spots. These were places briefly visited by protagonists in the plot. The sequences were shot in brighter colors and wide shots to reveal the beauty of this new space in frames. The song sequence Poongate in the film Shyama shows a romantic past in colorful shots in the backdrop of the backwaters and ships harbored in the distance. It is also replete with scenes of the couple embarking on a joyride in the backwaters with the Kochi skyline in the backdrop and the islands at a distance. The crisp editing and fast-moving shots ensure vibrancy to the plot. In contrast to this, one of the main reasons for this part of the islands in the city to get into mainstream media narrative is for its lack of drinking water facilities and the lack of infrastructural facilities. If one looks at the newspapers and their coverage of the islands, one could see several such reports about the lack of infrastructures in these islands. Waipin was in news in 1982 and afterwards for the infamous Hooch tragedy, in which 77 people died, 63 were blinded, and 15 crippled after they consumed spurious liquor sold by a government-authorized liquor shop. Most of the victims were poor fishermen and laborers who were mostly living in and around Waipin. The film Eenadu, directed by I.V. Shashi in 1986, is inspired by this tragedy. However, the location of the plot is not clearly foregrounded in the film. Even in earlier films, as discussed above, the city beyond the mainland was a touristic addition to the existence of the city. In the sense, there was a certain disembodied geography of this region, which added allure to the exploration of the city for its protagonists. These islands were not the beneficiaries of the post-colonial development schemes, and the politically and the socially backward population remained disconnected from the mainland till Gosri bridges connecting the central part of Kochi and islands were built in 2004. These islands, which are geographically significant for the development of the port, were socially produced as an underdeveloped area lacking basic facilities such as hospitals, higher education institutions, proper roads, etc. The islands and its people did not figure in these colorful visuals of Kochi in the 80s Malayalam cinema, except as distant greenery during joyrides in the backwaters. In the film Deshadinakli Kariyarilla, the young heroines who are close friends run away to the city and live a life of joy compared to their school life in non-urban milieu. The popular city spots in the film include Subhash Park, an earlier form of Marine Drive walkway, which are some of the markers of city planning and are located in the central part of the city. They also live in anonymity, and their life in the city is shown to be happy and lively. The sense of the city is produced by creating relatively brighter shots, fast music and background scores, and of course, fast pace of the narrative in this part of the movie. The heroines ultimately commit suicide, which may be read as the transient nature of happiness offered by the city. The title of the film itself, Migratory Birds, Deshadanakle Kariyarilla, Migratory Birds Do Not Cry, itself alludes to the protagonist's migration to the city and its temporary nature in the urban milieu. Another film released the same year, Shyama, also shows a similar experience of Kochi. The heroine is in a song sequence remembers her happy romantic time with her male lover in the city. Most of the city spaces appearing in this song are also the same spots mentioned above and which we saw in Deshadanakle Kariyarilla. After the song, the hero dies in an accident and she is away from Kochi in the mountains. The city's allure doesn't seem to last long in these films. City offers a fleeting moment of glitter before life ends. This captures the socio-political moment of the 80s in which the nation was thinking beyond the agriculture-based economy. The Gandhian imagination about village and the Nehruvian ideals of development were losing sheen, and the country was on the verge of adopting liberalization policies. The idealistic national moral ethic was extending beyond the village. The city was becoming more than the grey undertones in popular representations vis-a-vis the village. The 1980s were the processing time of this gradual shift, when the city was beginning to be considered as a place of movement and vibrancy, yet a place to be cautious about. One noticeable aspect in both the movies is that the characters come to the city, dwell for some time before they meet with death in the city. There is a non-urban milieu where their life is set otherwise, and the city is a place where they visit. The city seems like a place to go to, as if it is out there, away from one's own place and people who live in the city people who live in the city are in the background. The citizen, the people of the city, is located elsewhere, and the city is a passing space as their life fades. The citizens appear more clearly in Malayalam cinema from the 90s onwards. The plot and characters from the central part of the city begin to find space throughout the movie from this period. The movie In Harihar Nagar, written and directed by Siddiq and Lal, both of whom belong to Kochi, revolves around 4 young men in a middle-class residential colony. The film was mostly shot in Girinagar residential colony. Girinagar residential colony is one among the first residential colonies in Kochi, which was constructed in the late 60s by 67, 68. And in the early 60s, the wetland in this area was filled for a KPCC meeting. And later then this land was acquired and this colony was built in that spot. So the Park cum Recreation Club in the colony, which is locally known as Mammootty Park, is a frequent meeting place of the four friends in the film. In this scene, the heroes are running into the gate of the Mammootty Park. So the name Mammootty Park for this recreation club space comes because Mammootty used to rent a house here in the 80s before he moved to Madras. So several localities are also named after the actors. So now this is how the Mammootty Park looks now. Several local and city markers of urban planning from the backdrop against which the plot moves forward. In Harihar Nagar introduces more specific urban localities into the urban imagery of Kochi than the earlier films, in which the city was synonymous with Subhash Park, boat rides in the backwaters, beaches, and the walkway along the shores of the backwaters. These are some more shots from the park itself. This is, of course, Subhash Park. All the local spots in the movie are specifically middle class spaces, and the characters also belong to the same class. All the four heroes do not seem to be working, but just hanging out, riding their bikes, and teasing young women in public space of the city. They are shown as young urban men enjoying life, and at the end, they are left with a suitcase full of money. They seem to follow joyful pursuits of life in the colorful burgeoning Kochi. The film Chapa Kurisham, which was released 20 years after in Harihar Nagar, it is also written and directed by Samir Tahir, who hails from Kochi. It is also shot in the commercially vibrant parts of the city, such as Menaka, Broadway, MG Road, Pallimukku, Marine Drive, Walkway, etc. By this time, Subhash Park is no more a novelty. Instead, the busy roads with people, corporate offices, upper class house of one of the protagonists frame the city in this movie. The city can be visually created through several of these urban architectural markers, as in this movie, not necessarily the public spaces which used to mark the city earlier in the earlier movies. Arjun, a young wealthy man engaged in construction business, gets entangled with Ansari, a lower class Muslim from northern Kerala who works as a salesman in a supermarket in Kochi. Ansari is shown traveling from a slum in a bus to in and out of the commercial part of the city every day for his work. And when he travels, you can see that he crosses a bridge all the time he travels to the city, which points at the fact that he lives away from the central part of the city and probably towards the part we marked as A in the map. Arjun is in command of the city and the spaces he operates from till he gets embroiled in a tricky situation with Ansari. Arjun is the playful, successful young man of the city vis-a-vis Ansari, whose lower class status, Muslim identity, and his rented room in a slum distant from the central part of Kochi is well etched out. The central part of the city in the cinematic frame is associated with individuals who are not bound by their religious or gender identities, but also entitled and aspirational to immerse themselves in the joys of the city. In contrast to this, Malayalam film set in the islands and Fort Kochi socially produces the region by etching out religious identities. Some films set in the islands are Dani, Potten Vaava, Anniyum Rasoolum, some parts of the film Kutishranka, etc. Dani was written and directed and produced by acclaimed filmmaker T.V. Chandran. The film discusses the story of a poor saxophone player, Daniel Thompson. The film narrates Danny's life along with major historical happenings around the world. While historical time is built into the narrative, space finds only a passing mention that Danny was born in a village near the sea in Kerala. The Malayalam dialect spoken by Danny and his friend Freddy are that of the Christian shore communities in Kochi. Their names, social background, and dialect suggest that they could be either Latin Catholics or Anglo-Indians from the shores of Kochi. Danny and his friend Freddie's boat ride in the backwaters with its calm waters, in contrast to the waves of the sea on their way back from Chavaro, the wealthy landlord's house, and Danny's hut near the beach, indicate that the place is surrounded by the sea on the one side and backwaters on the other. Waipin and the other islands fit these geographical specifications better than any other place in Kochi. However, this deduction is based on cinematic visuals than a clear articulation of this place in the film. It has to be noted that Danny was made in 2001, that is 3 years before Ghost bridges were built. Ghost bridges connected the mainland of the city to these islands. So till then, it was waterways was the main form of transport for people and goods. So the islands and the population were yet to get their space in cinematic visuals. Danny had a rather difficult life because he is poor, and gets married. He decides to get married to a wealthy landlord's daughter, and he doesn't have a good relationship with his wife. So as he grew older, he was admitted to a hospital to avoid his presence at home. He became friends with Bhargavi Amma, who is also left behind by her family in the hospital. They travel together to meet Danny's daughter from his first marriage, and Danny dies on their way back. Bhargavi Amma gives him a decent burial according to Christian rituals against the wishes of her family. Thus, Danny finds solace in his death, away from his place of belonging and family in another place. Annayum Rasoolum, directed by Rajiv Ravi, narrates the tragic love story of Anna from Waipin and Rasool, who lives in Mattancherry. The film is remarkable for the manner in which it captures the geography of Waipin and its connection to the mainland through the metaphors of boat journeys. Vibrant visuals of church festivals and lower middle class life of Christian shore communities in the islands, lower class life of Muslim characters in the lower class milieu of Mattancherry, etc., create a well crafted blend of people and place in the film. Though a love story, the film captures the flow of people from the islands to the city for work, shopping, and almost everything. Geography, context, and human existence complement each other through the visuals, editing, background score, and other technicalities. Anna travels in a boat to her workplace in the city every day with her friends. The alternating disconnect with and link to the city, the differences and the similarities of both geographies are brought out through the boat journeys to and from the city in backwaters. Cinematic frames capture Anna and her family's life at home as dull and gloomy. Her aggressive brother and family are against her wishes to get married to Rasool. Anna commits suicide after realizing the impossibility of uniting with Rasool. Despite a well-etched geographical context, silence of Anna and her family members, other than her aggressive brother, pits them against the vibrancy of the geography and culture around them. Anna and her sisters' lives were bound by their economic, religious, and gender boundaries. In both Danny and Anniyam Rasoolum, the lower caste Christian hero from the shores of Kochi and the heroine from the islands do not outlive their cinematic climax. The surrounding water in the islands and their people, who are inseparable from this geography, enter Malayalam cinema through these films, but they are yet to survive the challenges of cinematic geography, which is often socially produced. Directed by Lijojo Spellisheri and screenplay by P.F. Matthews, who is a well-known Malayalam writer as well as screenplay writer. Chota Mumbai, directed by Anwar Rashid, screenplay and dialogues by Benny P. Nayarambalam, both of whom are from Kochi. Honey Bee, Big B, etc. are yet set in yet another part of the city, that is Fort Kochi, Mattancherry, Chellanam and adjoining areas. Some pockets of this part of the city is largely neglected in the post-colonial development endeavors. Dr. Justin has mentioned about Chellanam and the struggles of the fishermen there. Now this region gets marked in the World Art Map as the venue of Kochi Muziris Biennale since 2012 and is also a site of considerable tourist activity. The film Chota Mumbai, which was the box office hit, revolves around the story of Vasco, a small-time Goon, and his friends who idle away time by drinking and fighting. The central characters in the plot live in a lower class colony, and most of the members of the group, including Vasco, can be read to be belonging to Latin Catholic community from cultural markers such as Portuguese origin names and their social background etched out in the film. The geographical context of this part of the city is established from the beginning of the movie with an aerial shot of Fort Kochi with the Arabian Sea on its west. The voiceover with this shot, presumably that of the main protagonist Vasco, says that he grew up in this city with the wind blowing from the west. The proximity to the sea and a life woven in the context of possibilities and cultural associations related to it keep recurring in the movie. In one of the scenes at Vasco's father's street cafe, his younger sister jokingly tells her elder sister, making fun of a man who keeps on ordering for more food and eating at the shop, ഇയാളുടെ വയറെന്താ അറബിക്കടലാണോ? Is his stomach the Arabian Sea? There are numerous visuals of ships docked in the background, while the four friends frequently meet to plan their next move, whether it is to pay Vasutan in the hope that they would find jobs for them in Malaysia or just to hang out. Even amidst their dire economic and social situation, the image of ships both moving in the sea and in the dock remain as a sign of possible movement and hope. The cinematic exploration of the same community's members in the different geographic contexts of Fort Kochi and Waipin shows them to be differing in their aspirations and choices. Anna, the muted woman protagonist from Waipin in Anniyum Rasoolum, is a huge contrast to the always upbeat male hero Vasco from Fort Kochi and Chota Mumbai. Cinematic geography created by technology of place, including all the technical faculties used to create spatial dynamics, is constituted through gender as much as religion and space. The film Big B, released in the same year as that of Chota Mumbai, is also a popular Malayalam film set in Fort Kochi. Set in the historical part of Fort Kochi, the film garnered attention for its technical aspects such as cinematography and editing. Houses and garages in the film resemble colonial architecture, which are the site of tourist activity in Fort Kochi, like in the screenshot. This is quite a contrast to Chota Mumbai, in which the seashores and the backwaters of Kochi form the background in the frame in Big Bay, mostly during fight sequences. This is quite a contrast to Chota Mumbai, in which the seashore is the background for meeting friends, shared hopes and tensions as well. This different tonality for the waters around connotes some of the crucial scenes, especially the last fight scene, which hints at who is a more rightful native of the land. The narrative references also point to how foreigners who came through the sea and the locals who mixed with them forgot the natives and took things into their hands. The main protagonist of the movie, Bilal John Kurishingal, played by Mammootty, uses a degrading term to refer to the villain's mother, whom he says had relationships with foreigners who came in through ships to Kochi. The images and references in the movie connote how the open waters and the people they brought as causing a cultural or material threat to the people in the land. The movement and mixing of people, which has constituted Fort Kochi and its inhabitants, seem to be challenged here in terms of who was here earlier than the other, etc. Several conversations in the film Big B shows the limits of cosmopolitanism and openness, which are associated with open shores and long history of exchange with people of various ethnicities. The friction between the openness of the shores and the consolidation of norms on the land is a recurring trope in Big B. In this film, the much discussed cosmopolitanism of the port city of Kochi is constituted through haggling for power and claims for each community's prominence over the other. Both Big B and Chota Mumbai, set in different areas of Fort Kochi, are different in genre and spectator experience. However, in both the films, the socio-cultural background of protagonists is clearly foregrounded. In Big B, main protagonists are Muslims, Latin Catholics, Anglo-Indians, and low-caste Hindus. who are either lower class youth or are engaged in various kinds of unlawful activities. Chota Mumbai's main protagonists are Latin Catholics, lower caste Hindus, and Muslims. In these films, the central characters are people who have grown up in Fort Kochi and their social background is well etched out. They are not just engaged in individualistic pursuits in the city, which in Ashish Nandi's terms, whence a dream of total freedom for the individual, like in the case of the Arjun, the hero in Chapa Kurisha. But their communities get woven into the cinematic regions of Fort Kochi and the islands, unlike the central part of the city and its main protagonists. Spatiality and religious community are bound together in the cinematic imagination of Fort Kochi and the islands at different levels, while the central part of the city is imagined differently. Thus, foregrounding of diverse urban geography of Kochi in recent Malayalam cinema created an embodied cinematic geography informed by already existing narrative about these spaces. All these spaces and their people exceed these emerging cinematic representations. However, these visuals have already preserved them as memories the moment they have been filmed as moving images. They are indeed going to stay till new images circulate or even after that. So to conclude, the cinematic city is not independent of larger social, political, and economic changes, while it is also not reducible to any single one of these aspects. The cinematic Kochi is constituted through these larger social, economic, structural, and creative interventions, as discussed in the second part of the paper. However, the cinematic city always achieves the place captured, not just for technology's irreducible valence, but also for how the cinema individualizes it from several other possibilities and keeps them open for indefinite circulation. That part, especially that part of the city, as frozen in that moment. The analysis offered in the paper is an elaboration of a contextual understanding of Malayalam cinema and Kochi, which is by no means the only way to understand both. For instance, this cinematic city may evoke a multitude of affective spectatorship experiences such as nostalgia, a sense of a different time, space, and so on. What is done in the paper is an embodied geography of cinematic city, which also raises the question of absence of certain geographies and bodies. In 2016, the film Kammati Padam was directed by Raji Ravi. There is a certain Dalit geography which kind of comes in, and a micro region of Kochi and a Dalit geography which is portrayed in this film. This film constitutes another micro region of Kochi and introduces its people who ultimately get killed after they mark their bodies present on the Malayalam cinema screen. There is much more for Malayalam cinema to capture in terms of layered multiplicities of spaces and people thriving in the open shores of Kochi. To aspire for this, it is significant to understand how cinematic geography is socially produced and a certain embodied city space on the screen is chosen over others at a specific historical time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kristen. May I request those who have any queries or comments to please type it in the chat box. So,
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Rachel, you can go ahead and conduct the discussion session, but when you get a little bit of a time gap, you may allot it to me so that I would like to make a couple of points.
So right now we are waiting for the questions to come in. So
pardon?
Right now we are waiting for the questions to come in. We're still waiting for the questions to come in. So would you like to speak now?
Yeah, I would like to talk right now if it is possible. Yes.
Okay, sir, please.
First of all, Dr. Kamal Christie, your presentation was very, very um, effective and very, very impressive too, because the way in which you have built up this story of a cinematic geography um, was really a entirely new approach. Um, while thanking you, I would also like to raise a couple of points, more because of my lack of understanding probably of the way in which you've been building your case. Um, if I've understood you correctly, you were saying that the people of who lives upon the resources of the open sea were portrayed as a threat to those who are on land, or that seems to be one of the findings that you seems to have arrived at. Um, I totally agree with it, and as far as the city of Cochin, as well as other port cities on the coastal region, this seems to be the general pattern, um, the way in which people are categorizing each other. I would also like to refer to Peter, my very close friend, whom you also mentioned as one of the persons who helped you in your analysis. My relationship with Peter goes back years, and it got strengthened during the days of the fishermen's struggle. Because the fishermen's struggle their main demand was that um, mechanized fishing should be banned during the monsoon season, because it will unnecessarily damage the uh, uh, ecology of the sea, and also the availability for uh, further tapping of the resources. Now, this is, I think, for a different way of stating that all the major port cities of Kerala is on land which was used by the fisher people. Because the fisher people also they got a prior claim to the same place, same space, um, and particularly places like Cochin and Calicut and Koilon and all that, Alleppey. You see this, and there wasn't, even now, there is a struggle between the traditional marine fishermen uh, who is trying to defend their land rights, their right to live, their their right to exploit the sea, exploit in the sense that make use of the sea for a living. That is being surpassed almost every day by a urbanized space, and that urbanized space is also involved in fishing, but it is a fishing of a different nature, um, with its own rules and regulations and all that, and try to cripple this community, um, cripple it both socially and also perhaps even physically. I'm physically saying, the way in which they are uh, curbed from open access to the sea. Um, you see, you look at the cities which had grown into port cities. The latest is Cochin, compared to Koilon, compared to Vizhinjam, compared to Trivandrum, compared to Purakkad, compared to Ponnani, and compared to Calicut, um, and all that. Cochin is the latest entry, and that is the city which is now dominating every other. And probably uh, that is because the driving force behind the establishment of Cochin was not from Kerala, not from this region which is now we understand as Kerala, but it came from the impulses of an international community, and an international community which even earlier was engaged in international trade, but it was of a coastal type of trade. But then, with the arrival of Vasco da Gama and the interocean trade, the interocean navigation, they managed to divert this coastal trade, part of the coastal trade, into an interocean trade, which had its own demands. It required coastal establishments where they can build forts, where they can build factories, where they can control the transactions, trade transactions. So this struggle is, I think, behind quite a bit of even modern developments and even modern history. I mean, this is what I felt. Probably I'm off the mark because I may not have understood the implications of your own earlier statements. Anyway, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. And in fact, in this particular paper, I was not specifically looking at how the fishermen community is affected, or the role of fishermen community in the production of urban space in Kochi. One of the things that I was trying to understand was how does one of the threats is about this cosmopolitanism of this which comes with the sport city dimension, but of course it even in cinematic representations one can make out the frictions of these values of cosmopolitanism and the haggling for power that each community or different sections in the society seems to be engaged in. So in that sense, it's not specifically about fishermen community and how the displacement along the shores and how and also the loss of livelihood, etc. So it is more about because there is this Kochi. There are more frames about Kochi coming in cinema, and what does it mean? What is that about something new that is coming, or is it about how is it socially produced? If so, how? What are the implications of this social production? So that is something that I tried to do this in this paper. But thank you for your elaboration about the evolution of Kochi and your very important point that the prominence of Kochi as a port was sustained also because of international trade. A lot of times when one also talks about cosmopolitanism, what is somewhere missed out is also this aspect of how the colonizers and traders was so focused on their trade and their businesses that there was also very strict boundaries between who was living in Kochi, or the population of Kochi, and the colonizers and traders. Of course, there must have been possibilities for some level of merging, but at the same time, these boundaries were also very strictly kept. So probably it's not something new. These frictions are not something new, but it is also a continuing friction between different groups in Kochi.
Thank you, Christy. I will read out the questions there are quite a few questions that have come up in the chat box. So I'll read out them one by one. The first is from Leela PU. Congrats, ma'am. What about the movie Vikramaditya? Entirely on different communities. Next, what about new urban spaces like Kakanadu and Idapalli?
Yeah. So I'll answer the second question. In fact, in this the map I showed you, the part B is actually what I would consider is from Kakanada, Palarivattam, from Kakanada to Tevara, and Vaitila, including Vaitila, Kadavandra, etc. Because these are some of the places that keep recurring in cinema, especially like you rightly pointed out, Kakinad because of its software enterprises, and as a as a city that is as a part of the city that has emerged in a big manner in the last 15 years or so. So indeed, Kakinad is also part of this, is also considered as the heart of um, uh, Cochin city. If one looks at advertisements, newspaper reports, etc., one can see that these are the spaces which, the images of these spaces and buildings in these spaces come as the heart of Cochin in the taglines and so on. So indeed, Kakinad does come into this map. Mm. About the movie Vikramadityan, I'm sorry, I haven't watched this movie, but I'll definitely make it a point to watch and see how it plays out. Another thing I would like to say is that I have written this a very earlier form of this paper in 2015 in a very different manner. But of course, after that, I got a chance to work more on urban spaces. So this has given me uh, more perspectives to look at relook at the same paper I did earlier. So you would notice that most of the films I discussed are till 2015. So I'm sorry about Vikramadityan, but I'll definitely watch this movie and add it to my paper. Thank you. Thank you, Leela.
The next query is from Anand PK.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. Do you think the post-liberalization Malayalam cinema, or more specifically, those since 2000, the different spatial geographies or different locations in Kochi and its extended parts have some common threads in terms of lived experiences? For example, does Imayav and Kumblangi Nights, or even Oru Yemandan Premagatha that depicts Kadamakudi?
There are some common threads, like how the islands are portrayed. I think there is a certain way in which the islands come into, even in films like Haniyum Rasulum, it's a different setting that kind of makes you feel that this is different from the city of Kochi. The narrow roads, the houses of Anna and the character played by Sunny Wayne, they are adjacent houses, and there is this very narrow road, but at the same time it is tarred, etc. So there are different spatialities which look similar. I think even in this other recent film acted by Neeraj Madhav, it's about Pipin Chuvatile Pranayam, or something similar. I think which is also set in one of the islands. So these films do have some commonalities, and I think one commonality is that there are diversity of characters, and like one of the points that I also tried to make was how people living in Kochi are coming into the picture. So this is not something that is specific to Kochi itself. One would also see that this spatiality is coming into Malayalam cinema in a big way. Now, if you look at films like Maheshinte Pratikaram, Thondimudalum, Dritsatchiyam, there are numerous films which really etch out a geography Unlike unlike the films with the same, probably with the same in the same genre, which had appeared earlier. So in this sense, there is a way in which spatiality has become more detailed as a result of, I'm sure, different kinds of socio-cultural and political changes. So, so Kochi is my focus, so that is why this paper is about Kochi and cinema. But the ways in which space figures in, I think, Malayalam cinema differently is something that that is worth looking at. I do not know if I answered your question, Anand, but
In fact, Anand's question has a second part which came in slightly later. So, secondly, if one refers to films made based on Trishur, do you think that depiction doesn't have a multitude of representation like Kochi and ends up with a tendency to caricature people and characters based on religious and linguistic lines?
yeah, that's also a very good question, because Trishur is, in that sense, one cannot do away with that similar dialect that stands for Trishur. Trishur in different parts may have different dialects, but this particular dialect that comes across in Pranjayatan or Agarbatti, Punyalan Agarbatti, seems to be the one that um, stands for Trishur in that sense. But other than the dialect, I'm not sure how the spatiality figures in cinema about Trishur. What are the iconic markers, or is there more multiple spatialities about Trishur that comes into these frames? Is something I think we'll have to specifically look at that films that etch out Trishur, or that try to show us that this is based in Trishur. So probably there is much more chances for scope for one to look at it.
The next query is from Givargi Sayam. The technology of cinema, shooting, processing, editing shifted to the digital between 2005 and 10. The equipment became simpler, less cumbersome, and initially more affordable during this period. The medium gained considerable flexibility and access enlargement. In terms of technology and expertise, Kerala had an abundance. It was possible to relocate Malayalam movies away from Chennai, which had been the principal hub before that. Do you think this technology shift needs to be factored in while examining the spatiality factor, that is cinematic geography of Malayalam movies? If so, can similar changes be identified in Indian movies in general?
Yeah, oh, that's a very relevant point, especially in movies which, like, especially Chapa, Kurisha, etc. You will see a lot of frames in crowded spots, and as they are walking in the market and so on. So it's all done with this cameras which are much smaller and highly mobile, and probably it's also seeing sound even in these crowds. So in this sense, indeed the technological changes have immensely helped to bring out these multiple spatialities, even if it is a crowded market or crowded city spaces, etc. So technology does have a role in how diverse spatialities can be produced through these frames. In Indian cinema, first of all, what would one call as Indian cinema is still a question. But in other language films, if one looks at um, technology has indeed changed, um, and this technological change is also informed by what kind of technology is accessible to us. So, and what all has facilitated this technology to be available, etc. So, in that sense, when one looks at non-digital films, even on um, um, online or otherwise, the one is not, I mean, now one is more used to the OTT platforms, that clarity of digital frames, that it looks very different from how it was in or when we used to watch on television, etc. So in Indian films, definitely, I'm sure the technological aspects must have changed the cinema in different ways. There is this work by Ranjini Majumdar in which on Bombay and Bombay cinema, where she talks about how Bombay cinema has evolved, and the urban the Mumbai city as Mumbai city through Hindi cinema from the 70s, from the post-independent Indian times. So of course there is much more scope for one to look at probably each shot, each technique, and how this creates a certain spatiality, or how it helps facilitate to foreground different spatialities.
The next query is from Hari Krishnan. Thank you for that. Really interesting. Do you see a shift within the quote unquote new wave, which has been part of the last few years of cinema? I'm thinking specifically of Charlie, Parava, Kumbhalangi Nights, where both the city spaces are central to the story, as are the characters in the story. Meanwhile, not relying only on the cliched images of the sea or port, but spaces like streets, backwaters, homes, Imayo even.
Can you please repeat the question, Rachel?
So, do you see a shift within the new wave, which has been within the new wave? So, whether the city spaces, rather than relying on the cliched images,
Got it. Yes, so the new wave, the term, I'm not sure how one can bring it as an analytical category, but definitely there is a change in the way spatialities are foregrounded. Like you said, like somebody has mentioned Kumbhalangi Nights, and several other spaces within Kochi is coming, and with that, different kinds of people and actors are also coming in to the frames. So if one looks at the number of actors who have come up, who are not just heroes and heroines who are from Kochi, it's quite a considerable number. Actors like Sudhi Kopa. There are so many actors from Kochi who have found space in Malayalam cinema, especially in the last 2 decades. So so definitely there are more spaces coming in, and there is, like you said, the backwaters, the places, etc. But then what one also needs to probably look at is, what does this visibility or coming of these frames, what does it entail? Is it there is a change, but what is this change is something I think that is worth exploring. How are the characters characters playing out, what kind of spatialities are created in cinema? It's also a creation of spatialities. It's not just out there, it is out there, but it is also a selection and making of that space. So how does that how is that made concrete is a process that would be very interesting to look at.
The next query is from Abhilash P. Excellent presentation, ma'am, and thank you, sir, for adding interesting findings. My question is, like art portrays contemporary human and surroundings in multidimensional angles, is it possible to create history of those humans and surroundings from the beginning with the help of the same art?
I mean, if it's about largely about art, I'm not an authority to talk about, but if it is about media and cinema, absolutely each mass media report or each cinema is part of the evolution of sociality itself. As I mentioned, it is there are studies which talk about the evolution of urban planning in relation to how the genre of film noir evolved in the cities of the US. So there are, and also there is this other work by Charlotte Brunsden about London and English cinema, about the weather, about politics, about culture, etc. So each piece of any expression is, of course, a relic that needs to be studied, and that kind of contains the history and evolution of sociality in different ways. I agree with you.
We have two questions from Vidyasagar Sharma. Thank you so much, Professor, for such a wonderful paper and presentation. My name is Vidyasagar, and I've recently submitted my MPhil dissertation on Changing Contours of Caste in Urban Spaces, a case study of Delhi at the Department of Political Science, University of Delhi. There are two questions. I think I will read out the first question now, so they are separate queries. First is, taking reference from Lefebvre's idea of production of space, to what extent the segregated urban spaces like slums and ghettos have been equally represented on the silver screen as excluded spaces of marginal identities?
Yes. Thank you for your question, Vidyasagar. It's there is not a lot of representation of, I mean, at least in recent times, of slums and oppressed identities in that sense. But one of the films that we mentioned was about Kammati Padam, in which the hero is the heroes, the protagonists are Dalit characters, but there is also a upper caste friend with these heroes, played by along with these Dalit characters. So there is some representation, but at the same time, the important question then is to look at what is represented and how it is represented as well. So the visibility in itself, the representation in itself is an important question. One cannot negate that. That in itself is important. At the same time, as scholars, it's also important to look at how and why they get represented as well. So, for instance, about Kammati Padam, Dr. Ratish Kumar has written this piece about how the main Dalit characters in the film are made to look blacker than they are, and also with the use of protruded teeth, etc., they are made to look hyper Dalit. And he kind of compares this to an ethnographic gaze, which the colonizers used to portray the tribal population of India. So in that sense, there is how these representations are made accessible is also something that is worth looking at. The representation itself is very less, but at the same time, what is represented is also, I think, important to look at.
The second part of Vidyasagar's query is, do you find any difference in terms of representation of marginal identities of segregated urban spaces in Hindi cinema and regional cinema?
I'm not sure I'm equipped to answer this question. I haven't studied Hindi cinema in depth, so I think I won't be able to make a comparison between Hindi cinema and Malayalam cinema, also because of the fact that I understand that it is a very both have very different histories, very different ways in which both evolved. So I think I won't be able to make that comparison.
So Dr. Christie, those are the queries. We only have this many queries. We have a comment from Sridevi, who has drawn your attention to the thesis, City in Cinema, a study of urban spaces in Malayalam films from 1950s to 1980s. The author's name is, the researcher's name is not given. However, yeah.
Thank you.
So those are the queries that we have today. Thank you, Dr. Christie, for addressing them marvelously. And I request Professor Michael Tharagan to say the concluding remarks. I think, yeah.
There's no more questions, no more comments?
That's it, sir. So we have come to the end of the question and answer session.
Okay, I take this opportunity to once again thank Kamal Christie. First of all, these are the kinds of discussions which keeps us all intellectually alert. And I'm sure that the KCHR as an organization is very much interested in keeping more people involved in this kind of analysis. And your presentation would attract, I suppose, more people into this whole webinar series. And I'm sure that all the people who have come and spared their time to listen to this talk, they also deserve our very, very strong gratitude, strong thanks. I hope you will keep coming back to this webinar series. And once again, thanks to Kamal for the very fine presentation. Hope to meet you again at KCHR functions, at such functions. We would very much, we would be very glad to welcome you again. Thank you.
Thank you very
sir.
much, Professor Tharakan, and thank you everyone for your patient listening.
Thank
I
you,
would
Dr.
absolutely like to come back to KCHR series again to listen to and to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Christie. Again, our next webinar in the KCHR webinar series is on November 3rd, Tuesday. A review of the idols of Buddha, the enlightened profounder, Shasta, the guardian deity, and Shabarimala Ayyappa, the tribal ancestral deity, from iconographical perspectives. This is by Dr. Ajit Kumar, retired professor and head of the Department of Archaeology, University of Kerala. And thank you, Dr. Christie, and thank all of you for participating in this webinar. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.